The Mountain Farm Museum is part of an effort to preserve some of the cultural heritage of the Smokies. These buildings, most dating from around 1900, were moved from their original locations throughout the Smokies to this site to create an open-air museum. These structures offer a glimpse into the past and hopefully a greater appreciation of the rural heritage of this country. John E. Davis constructed his house with chestnut logs. A log was hewed flat on two sides and split in half along its length to produce two building logs. These were used in matching positions on opposite walls. The ends of the logs were joined with half dovetail notches. Half dovetail joints locked the logs together. Davis chose to seal the chinks or cracks between the logs with hand-split boards instead of clay. A sturdy wood-burning fireplace made of stone provided the only heat source during the long cold winter months. Also used for cooking fires, keeping the woodshed full was an unending chore. Ashes from the wood was also important. Ashes removed from the stoves and fireplaces were kept in an ash hopper. Dusting the leaves of garden plants with ashes was a common method of insect control. Ashes also added nutrients to the soil. One of the most important uses of ashes was to produce lye. Water poured through the ashes leached out the alkali in them, and the liquid collected was lye. The most common use of lye was to combine it with animal fat and cook the mixture to produce lye soap. Located near the house and protected from animals by fences, the family garden produced vegetables that could be eaten fresh and preserved for the winter by canning, drying, and pickling. Some vegetables, like potatoes, turnips, and cabbage, stored well in wintertime if protected from freezing. Corn was the most important crop on mountain farms. Corn provided fresh vegetables at harvest time and was also dried and ground in the corn mill. A corn crib protected the dried ears from the weather and animals. The shucks were also used. They were woven into chair seats, stuffed into mattresses, made into hats, rugs, and mops. They were also used to feed livestock. The Hickory King variety, developed in the mid-1800s, was popular with the southern Appalachian farmers. Other crops were grown on mountain farms, including wheat, rye, potatoes, squash, pumpkins, and beans. Sorghum cane was grown on many mountain farms. Juice from the cane was cooked to produce sorghum molasses, which was spread on biscuits or used in baking. The juice was cooked in large pans or kettles until it thickened into a sweet, dark, rich syrup. Another source of sweetener was honey, so many families kept hives of bees. Because older black gum trees are often hollow, sections of gum trees were commonly used as beehives, or bee gums, as they were commonly called. The cooler climate of the mountains provided good conditions for growing apple trees. Apples were eaten raw, used to make cider, vinegar, applesauce, apple butter, and pies. Apples were also preserved. Apple slices were dried by exposing them to a sulfur smoke to kill the bacteria. Dried apples were used in the winter for snack cakes and pies. Of course, every farm has a barn. A barn provides a stable for livestock, and the loft above needs to store enough feed to last the animals throughout the winter. The barn also provided a shelter place for doing various chores, such as woodworking and equipment repair. There's also a place to store the farm tools and the plows and the wagons. Many of the animals typically found on a mountain farm included milk cows, cattle, sheep, geese, ducks, turkeys, guineas, and of course chickens. Chickens provided eggs and meat, as well as feathers for stuffing pillows and mattresses. The most common work animal was the horse. Like most farm animals, the domestic pig is not native to the area. In 1920, European wild hogs escaped from a private reserve in North Carolina. By the 1940s, they had spread into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and pose a threat to the native plants and animals. Farm animals were butchered in the fall after the weather was cold enough to keep the meat from spoiling until it was cured. Salt was the primary curing ingredient. The meat was covered with salt, then placed on shelves, in boxes, and in barrels, and then stored in the meat house. The salt was absorbed by the meat, and it retarded the growth of bacteria. Smoking was also a way of preserving the meat. The meat was hung in the meat house and subjected to a smoky fire for a week or longer. Smoke added flavor, but it also produced chemical compounds that helped protect the meat from bacteria and insects. Out of the necessity of keeping the equipment repaired and the horses shoed, many farms included a small blacksmith shop. The iron was forged by heating it with the bellows and beating it into shape with the hammer and the anvil. A reliable source of fresh drinking water was a necessary consideration when selecting a farm site. A spring house provided a place to keep perishable foods cool and protected from animals. Water from a spring was channeled through a spring house by the means of a wooden or stone trough. Containers of eggs, milk, and butter were kept cool by the flowing water. The Mountain Farm Museum is located behind the Okanalufty Visitor Center near Cherokee, North Carolina.